Hi everyone, welcome to the first in the monthly members catch up, where I'm going to give videos that are going to help to give you a wider understanding of some of the key elements to the program, but also factors related to kind of other broader biological mechanisms. And I think it's quite apt that we start off with one of the big areas of function, which is thyroid hormone. I'm just going to run through a list of some of the things that thyroid hormone is responsible for, and you get a grasp of why maintaining this, what is essentially an evolutionary process that enhances function, is key of what we're trying to do. Here's some of the list, because my brain's not big enough to think about all of these at once. The first one is embryonic cell migration and differentiation. And that also continues from the growth which happens in the womb all the way through our adult life. So if we don't have adequate thyroid hormone available, we can see changes to growth, to organization, and this is where we can see problems that occur within the developing fetus. It's worth noting that the fetus doesn't actually have a thyroid gland until the second trimester. The placenta will actually pick up with something called beta-HCG, or human chorionic gonadotropin. Now, this is quite important because it's very similar to thyroid and creates some of the organization that we have. Now, if the mother is experiencing issues with thyroid hormone production, then this will help support, but only for so much. And it's worth noting that perhaps one of the key mechanisms why women tend to miscarry is because there's not enough thyroid hormone available. The fetus isn't kept in as good a working order as possible. Also combine that with the high levels of estrogen that tend to make the uterus quite hypoxic and not deliver enough oxygen to the surrounding structures. Another area as well is obviously low progesterone, which tends to be synergistic with how estrogen, progesterone, and thyroid function together. Also, entire development of the nervous system is dependent on adequate thyroid hormone. We have hair growth, how the adrenal glands function, which kind of makes sense as to why people think they have adrenal fatigue when perhaps adequate function of thyroid hormone and mitochondria aren't actually working effectively. Skin and pigmentation, development and function of the gonads and reproductive tissues, conversion of carotenes to vitamin A. One of the things that you tend to see in people with low energy states is they have quite orangey palms or on their hands or their feet. And this is usually they're consuming a reasonable amount of foods high in beta carotenoids like squashes and other orange-based foods or yellowy-based foods. And because it's difficult for the conversion of this carotenoids to vitamin A, you tend to see them accumulate in other tissues and in fat pads and other areas around the body. We have the absorption of intestinal glucose. We have the manufacture of cholesterol. And that's very important because cholesterol is not one of the ultimate antioxidants that the body has. It's also very important in building new tissue. This is why we tend to see in hypothyroid states people with high cholesterol is because the thyroid isn't being organized and converting the cholesterol effectively into what is essentially all our other hormones. So cholesterol with vitamin B6 and vitamin A is converted to the master hormone, which is pregnenolone. And then we can produce our progesterone, our cortisol, we can produce our testosterone, estrogen, and other hormones like DHEA. So it's really important that thyroid is functioning. And bear in mind that it's actually one of the master hormones for metabolism. It's involved in virtually every aspect of your metabolic state, which has far-reaching implications to energy, digestion, sleep, reproduction, and many other areas of health within the body. One of the problems that tends to occur with thyroid hormone is, first of all, I don't think it's actively assessed that well. So the major component of assessing hypothyroid state, and I'm focusing more on hypothyroidism than hyperthyroidism, because I think it tends to be one of the more common areas of thyroid dysfunction, though we can chat about that at some other point, is that if we go to the doctors and we have these symptoms related to fatigue, digestion, infertility, not being able to maintain pregnancy, people often look at thyroid hormone. Now that's measured by a TSH, or thyroid stimulating hormone. That is a hormone that's produced by the pituitary. We have other hormones that are produced at the pituitary, such as growth hormone, luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, adrenocorticotropic hormone, which is our hormone that enhances the production of adrenal hormones. And what tends to happen is that if there isn't adequate thyroid hormone available, we have a really hard time producing these precursor hormones that are at the pituitary. So we might actually make a suggestion here that because we're seeing a lot of tumours now developing in the pituitary, can we make a suggestion that if there isn't adequate thyroid hormone available, we'll start to see certain areas of growth within the pituitary? And bearing in mind that prolactin, which is another tumour that's produced in the pituitary, we're finding about 1 in 1,000 people with pituitary tumours. And can this be linked to potentially decreased thyroid hormone production? Well, there are some factors that could suggest that for sure. So maintaining adequate thyroid hormone production is going to be essential here. But getting back to the blood test, sometimes we see with thyroid stimulating hormone that if it's not at its level, which is generally, some endocrinologists will suggest that anything above 4 or 5 units of TSH would suggest that you have a hypothyroid state. But there are areas of nutrition and stress that suppress the actual production or the communication between cells and the feedback loop between the pituitary and the production of those cells. So our thyroid stimulating hormone test becomes a complete waste of time. And perhaps this is where we should be looking at adequate features of other areas of assessment that have a broader biological mechanism, such as our ability to produce temperature and the basal temperature test. What our pulse is like. Are we producing a lot of hormones like adrenaline and cortisol that increase the amount of pulse that we have? Can we actually look at real-time symptoms and correlate with those? Constipation, infertility, hair thinning, energy loss, weight gain. All of these are adequate areas of dictating perhaps that our thyroid isn't where it should be. So what we need to consider first of all is within a person's diet, what are the foods that are either stimulating good energy production or also blocking energy production? Perhaps a diet that's high in raw green vegetables and nuts and seeds and has a lot of compounds that slow down the ability of thyroid hormone to be produced, which ultimately slows down our mitochondria and how we produce energy, and also dictates which fuel we use. If in a good working order, we produce a lot of energy by breaking down carbohydrates and fats together. In a stress state, we often switch to an inefficient production of energy via glucose. And then when that gets lost, we start burning fats all the time, which is actually quite hard on the body to be in a state of permanent fat burning. It actually produces less carbon dioxide, which means we can actually use less oxygen, because the amount of carbon dioxide in the system is key to how much energy we release from using oxygen with our fuel substrates such as carbohydrate and fat. So first thing we need to do is get the diet. We need to make sure that the stresses that are around the human body are really there that can be dealt with by the individual. And if we don't get our nutrition right first of all, one of the first things that we're going to see is when we're exposed to stress, we'll see key things such as digestion decreasing, normal hormone cycles, aspects of fertility decreasing, certainly our mood decreasing, and perhaps issues like weight gain and alterations to sleep. Though not all in those orders, and certainly there are different aspects for each people. So the key, first of all, for getting the thyroid functioning appropriately is getting your diet right, first of all, and having plenty of easily digestible foods that create energy available. So with that in mind, hopefully you know a little bit more about the thyroid. It's a very quick post about why something like the thyroid and how we produce thyroid hormone, which has essentially been evolving over 4 billion years or so with the enhancement of how our cells started to function and use more pathways that involve slightly more efficient mechanisms. So keeping the thyroid healthy and happy is one of the reasons why we have a good working order. And if we don't have that good working order, this is where we start to see problems occur. So hopefully you found that useful. Look out for more member videos coming up, and feel free to ask any questions on the forum, and look forward to seeing you there sometime soon. Take care. Bye.